Hi everyone, this is my cognitive processing models artifact. So this is a cross between a brochure and a news article, kind of. So I'll give you a quick look through and I'll go over it. Okay, let's begin with main assumptions. The cognitive processing lens holds that literacy and learning take place in the mind. Cognitive processing frameworks attempt to explain the internal workings of the mind as individuals engage in complex mental activities. There are mental processes that take place in the mind during activities like reading, as well as many other tasks, complex tasks. Researchers hope to discover and explain how the individual reader interacts with print to construct meaning. The goal of this theory is to come to an understanding of how those tasks are learned and mastered through underlying unobservable mental processes. So, how does the cognitive processing model, how has it helped shape literacy education? Cognitive processing models have transformed literacy education. This model came to fruition in the 70s and 80s, but is still a prominent theory in the field today. Researchers and educators have shifted from the behaviorist perspective that previously focused on learning as a response to stimuli, as well as they began to question the constructivist view that believed children actively construct their own understanding. So these new researchers, aren't denying the constructivist view, but they are beginning to ask the question of how are students constructing their own understanding? What is happening inside the black box of the mind relating to literacy? Researchers and teachers are focusing on mental processing, storage, and retrieval of information of students in the classroom, and they're trying to create activities that will foster that. So let's begin. For the purposes of discussion later on, I'm going to start with the questions down here. Questions cognitive researchers might ask. So keep these in the back of your mind because they'll connect with the discussion later on. What are underlying mental processes taking place during reading? How are complex tasks like reading learned and mastered? What stages, processes, and/or routes are involved? Do children have to identify letters before being able to construct meaning? The bottom-up approach. Do children require background knowledge for smooth reading? The top-down approach. Or is it a combination of both? Interactive. So let's begin with information processing models. Atkinson and Schifrin developed this model to illustrate how information moves through certain stages in storage systems. Specifically, it focuses on aspects of memory encoding and retrieval. Go's model. Go adapted the information processing model to a bottom-up approach where cognitive processing proceeds from lower order to higher order stages. Then we have the automatic information processing model. LaBerge and Samuel's model was another bottom-up approach with 5 components: visual memory, phonological memory, episodic memory, semantic memory, and attention. This was a linear approach which focused on internal attention as a primary factor for comprehension. Interactive compensatory model. Rumelhart shows neither a bottom-up nor a top-down method because they don't allow for higher-level thinking. This is more of an interactive model. Rumelhart's model discusses the unobservable cognitive processes that take place in the mind as non-linear, where higher order and lower order thoughts influence each other. Compensatory model aspects arise as one cognitive process helps the other with its shortcomings. So when a student isn't able to identify a word, they use another cognitive process like context clues to compensate for the unknown word. Phonological core variable difference model. Stanovich stated that those that struggle with dyslexia had phonological processing deficits that affected their reading ability. He came up with, his main focus was dyslexia as the students struggle with cognitive processing. Dual route cascaded model. Kohlhart believed that a person who sees words and classifies them as words, sight words, or the lexical route, or non-words, non-lexical route. Sight words are automatic, while non-lexical route follows the letter to sound rule. Okay. Let's go on to supporting instructional practices. Phonemic awareness. In relation to Stanovich's phonological core variable difference model, students should be practicing and building skills in phonemic awareness. An instructional practice that supports this cognitive model is to listen to rhyming books or nursery rhymes. Students could play linguistic games that allow for speech sound manipulation. There's also other resources on this tiny URL that I will show you. Okay, so this is the Reading Rocket page that tiny URL will bring you to. This shows many different strategies that teachers can use to practice phonemic awareness. I'm going to scroll down to show you this one. Do these words rhyme? So this is a rhyming game that teachers can play with their students to develop phonemic awareness. I'm not going to read it all, but basically the teacher is breaking down the word into phonemes, the single sound, using physical gestures, and then blending it. So she's modeling it for her students. In this example, she's blending the word make. So in one fist, she has the sound in the other fist, she has the sound ache. And then she puts her two fists together and blends the word make. And then she has students practice that with her. So that's a great example of a rhyming game to develop phonemic awareness. Back to our other strategies for instructional practice, gradual release of responsibility. As an instructional practice, teachers can follow the gradual release of responsibility. This practice supports cognitive processing because the entire premise of gradual release of responsibility is to model thinking. Teachers are modeling their own thinking for students, teaching them strategies for thought and literacy. Gradual release of responsibility involves modeling, guiding, and giving students time to practice. So gradual release of responsibility isn't necessarily an activity for students, but it's an instructional strategy for all teachers to implement in any lesson. And this really does connect with cognitive processing because it's showing students your own cognitive processing, modeling, and then giving students time to practice on their own so you're able to understand their cognitive processing. Now, flexible readers. In conjunction with an interactive compensatory model, teachers can educate students on how to be flexible readers. Flexible readers look for multiple strategies to figure out unknown words. Teaching context clues is an effective instructional strategy. So back to that interactive compensatory model. We need students to be flexible readers when they're trying to read, especially in emergent readers, because they're not going to be able to consistently be 100% accurate all the time. They have to have flexibility and other strategies to figure out those unknown words. As I had said before, if a student struggles, they might not have a word, they might come to a word that they don't understand, and they will use another strategy like context clues to figure out what that word might mean, or they'll use their phonemic awareness or the letter sound rule where they sound out the word to figure it out. So teachers need to be able to teach flexibility in readers through other strategies. And teaching to be a flexible reader connects with the cognitive processing models because we need students to have that underlying, unobservable cognitive process of being flexible to be a successful reader. Now, moving on to the discussion. With your understanding of bottom-up, top-down, and interactive theories, which we talked about before, which theory most aligns with your educational philosophy? So I would go back up here and connect with a theorist as a refresher. And then the second question, with the 3 instructional practices provided above, which would you most likely be to incorporate in your classroom and why? Could it be because they might connect to another literacy lens that you also connect with? Then my references. Thank you.